Hello, everyone, and welcome to the latest episode of the Nordic Football Podcast. I'm Steve Wyss. I'm joined as ever by Jonathan Fadugba, and we just witnessed the first round of the Allsvenskan 2021. And first of all, I just want to say unbelievable response to our season preview podcast for the Allsvenskan this year. It was a mammoth edition. Thanks very much, all of you, for churning through such an epic. We were delighted with some great feedback. Glad you all enjoyed it. Jonathan, how's things with you? Is your voice recovered from last week's episode yet? And how about the first round of the Allsvenskan? What are you making of it?
Hi, Steve. Hi, everybody. Yes, my breath is back after about 5 or 6 days of tranquility. Thank you, everybody who's tuned in. We had an unbelievable response to the pre-season Allsvenskan preview podcast, which was a beast, and I really enjoyed being part of it. And yeah, I've been really, really happy with the response, to be honest. I've had a lot of tweets and comments from you all saying like well done and stuff like that, and that you enjoyed it. So I was really happy to hear that. And obviously you can check it out on Twitter at Nordic Footpod. It's our pinned tweet if you haven't listened to it, or subscribe and go back, and it's still there available. So yeah, it's been a good few days since the season has started. So the pre-season podcast got the juices going, and the weekend was a sort of meat in the sandwich, wasn't it? It was a entertaining first round.
I was excited. Like I said in the pre-season podcast, I was really excited about the start of the year in Sweden. I watched 2 or 3 games. I've got plenty to say certainly about the AIK match coming up soon. But I enjoyed the first round. There were a couple of low-scoring games, but it's really good it's up and running.
Yeah, for sure. And before we get into that, we're going to discuss the sort of opening round. It's going to be a short overview of what happened in the opening round, and we're going to take some listener questions as well. We've had quite a few listener questions. Our audience is growing on Twitter at Nordic Football, so follow us there and join us. Been some really good questions which we'll address. But before we do that, we want to start with the Patreon. We want to start with our Patreon shout out. So patreon.com/Nordic Football Podcast, and I just want to give a shout out to our patrons. I'm not going to name you by surname, but you know who you are if you're listening. So I just want to give a quick shout out before we start, because we didn't get time in the season preview podcast, but just wanted to say a big shout out and a thank you for your support as ever to Jurgen, Charlotte, Alexander, Team Overs, Passit, and Alex. So we want to give you guys a massive shout out on this to start this show. We really appreciate your support, and it really helps us. Of course, we reinvest any profits back into the podcast. So, the more people we have joining us, the merrier. And as I say, patreon.com/Nordic Football Podcast. If you want to sort of buy us a coffee or whatever, you want to, subscribe. There's 3 different tier systems, and we're going to start some bonus content starting this week. So if you do want to have a little bit of extra bonus content, then we're going to start bringing you some of that this season. We promise it this time, so we're going to do it. But yeah, thanks a lot to you guys. We really appreciate your support, as I say. Steve, let's get into week 1 then. It was a very entertaining opening round, wasn't it? And the first game you're going to sort of pick my brains on is what have you got in store for us? What are you going to talk about?
Yeah. Well, I just want to echo my thanks to the patrons as well. And yes, there is some bonus content coming out back end of this week, so look out for those. But yeah, once again, thanks very much for all your support there. In terms of the results this week, I just want to actually go through the results before we talk about any match in detail. Things started off with a 3-2 win for Malmö against Hammarby. Other results there: Örebro 0, IFK Gothenburg 0, Norrköping 1, Sirius 1, Mjällby 0, Varberg 0, Halmstad 1, Häcken 0, probably a big shock of the round. Elfsborg 0, Djurgården 2, Kalmar 0, Ostersund 0, 3-0 nils in the first round, which is interesting, and AIK 2, Degerfors 0. And things started off on Saturday, Malmö 3, Hammarby 2, and this was a wild encounter. I thoroughly enjoyed watching this one, I must say, Jonathan. And I know you were very, very excited as well, culminating in quite a sensational finish as well. Take us through this game.
Yeah, couldn't really have asked probably for a better season opener, to be honest. It was, as you say, a wild one, Steve. The champions against one of the contenders, maybe potentially for the title. We've given our predictions in terms of where we think our teams will finish, but you can never count out Hammarby because they always bring a bit of excitement and a bit of attacking flair to games, and that's what they did in this game. It was end-to-end stuff. I thought it was one of the best games I've seen in Allsvenskan for quite some time, to be honest. It really set the tone, and I'll be honest, when Örebro IFK Göteborg came on after the game, it was straight after the Malmö game. It was a bit of a being brought back down to earth to a certain extent, because the Malmö Hammarby game was just end-to-end stuff. It was really wild. Malmö sort of went for a lineup that you probably expected. I think I mentioned who I'd expect to be in their sort of starting team. Kolak was up front. Obviously, he made his debut. He looked quite lively, actually. Didn't get on the score sheet, but I'm sure he's going to bring something to the team. We'll see how he goes. But they had Erik Larsson, Armor Hodzic, Bråsen, and Knudsen at the back. Anders Christiansen, of course, who got on the score sheet. Bonke Innocent, who is really starting to establish himself now. Bonke Innocent in that side. Joringa Berget, Ola Toivonen, who actually got injured early on and had to go off. Soren Reeks and Antonio Kolak. Hammarby went for a kind of a 4-3-3. They had Aziz Watara Mohammed. He played right back, which I was a bit surprised about. Richard Magyar, Fjolesen, Mohamed Jaiz. Then they had Khalili. He scored an unbelievable free kick, by the way. Beautiful free kick, just on the stroke of half time. Jeppe Andersen, Mads Fenger. And then the front three, Akun Kimmi Amu, we'll talk about in a minute. Astrid Selmani on his debut for Hammarby in the league. And Gustav Ludvigsson, who's always quite productive and did get on the score sheet himself. It was a really, as I say, open game. Malmö had about 56% possession. They racked up a lot of shots, 19 shots. But it was Hammarby who took the lead. And it was a nice assist from Khalili for Ludvigsson. He headed home. Things were heating up on the bench. There's, the 8 fans in the stadium were making some serious noise. I'm told that there was also people in the executive boxes and that kind of thing, because it was really quite loud, to be honest. In that big stadium there, it really felt quite loud. The people in the stands like screaming and stuff like that, and it gave it a bit more. It really added to the sense of occasion, to be honest. They made a lot of noise. If that was 8 fans in the crowd, it sounded like there was about 800. But Malmö turned it around. Anders Christiansen scored, and then Soren Reeks scored to make it 2-1 in quick succession. But Khalili, just on the stroke of half time, there was a long break for an injury, and then in stoppage time, he scored an equaliser. Like I say, a really, really nice free kick. And Akun Kimi Amu made a fantastic run to play his part in sort of helping that goal, drawing the foul. So it was 2-2 at half time, obviously packed full of goals, and then second half was not as lively in terms of goals, but 90th minute winner, Steve, Jonas Knudsen, and we'll talk about that in a second. It was a hell of a strike.
Yeah, it certainly was. And my long-lasting memories of this game were how wildly end-to-end it was. In terms of the actual stats, you would look at, if you hadn't seen the game, you look at the stats, 15 shots to 4 for Malmö, 56% possession. You would think they absolutely battered them and smashed them to pieces. And they were the better team for sure. But I think Hammarby had their moments in this game, if not the shots. They had some very dangerous occasions breaking, catching Malmö out of the back a little bit. And if the right decision had been made, they could have easily scored another couple of goals themselves, I felt, Hammarby, even if their sort of moments were more sporadic, so in the second half. A couple of players I want to talk to you about in this game. There was a lot of talk about Antonio Kolak pre-match, obviously a big money signing for Malmö. How do you think he did in this fixture?
Yeah, like I said, he did okay. I think he, obviously he's come with a big reputation. Their other signing is injured at the moment, so he didn't take any part in it. There's a lot of talk about obviously having to replace Isak Kiese. I thought he looked fairly lively, and he made some decent runs. He brought people into the play. He was sort of a target man that you can kind of play off. So, all in all, I thought he did quite well, to be honest. Early days, of course, people are going to expect goals from him, but I thought he sort of played off the other players fairly well. It's I couldn't really judge him completely off that one game, but from what I saw, the fans after the game as well were quite positive about him. In terms of like statistics wise, if you want me to just reel off 1 or 2 stats, he had 2 shots on target, 3 shots off target, 3 out of 3 dribbles completed, so that was pretty successful. 81% pass accuracy, 18 passes. And in terms of aerial duels, he got 0 out of 4 for aerial duels. So that wasn't too great. But along the ground, he got 50% of his duels won. So yeah, all in all, he made 2 tackles as well. All in all, it was a decent
assist as well to help him out.
Yeah.
So yeah, I thought he looked all right as well. And I mean, Hammarby, who caught your eye for Hammarby the most?
Yeah, I mean, the one person I came away from that game excited about was Akun Kimi. I've said it before, and he was in my 10 to watch last season, and unfortunately he didn't really break through. I think he needed that adaptation sort of period of time from Nigeria. He wasn't really much in the team. Towards the end of the season, he started to come into things a bit more, but he wasn't really prominent. If I could go back again and have him in this season, I would. I'd have him as the number one player to watch in the league. I think he's going to be a superstar. I think he looks sensational. Some of the skills in that game got me off my seat, and I kind of on Twitter this week, I've been a bit, grumpy about the Premier League, just sort of saying that, I don't know, I've not been enjoying the Premier League massively, to be honest, in the last few weeks. That game in Allsvenskan, Malmö Hammarby, was a game that got me excited. And that's not an excitement I felt watching the Premier League in recent weeks, I have to say. And Amu was part of that. He got me off my seat. Some of the skills, I don't know if you've seen it on Twitter. I think we posted one of them, drawing players in like some sort of matador. Drew a player in and just shifted it, chipped it over him, and sort of he fell on his backside and just ran past him. He did that twice. Really unbelievable skill. Really made a really nice dribble for the equaliser from Kalili as well. He's got star quality, Amu. I said sort of, I felt a bit dirty comparing him to Messi when he scored a goal in the Swedish Cup in pre-season. But I watched the goal again just after the game because I was like, let me just look into this guy again. And it really is Messi-esque. I mean, it's just the low centre of gravity, the shift, the fast pace, the shift past players, the ability to shift his body and go past men, and then that finish from outside the box, in that pre-season match, like I say, the Swedish Cup. But in this game again, he just showed those glimpses. He went off after about 77 minutes, which I think was a mistake from Hammarby, to be honest. They ceded a lot of ground there. He was good on the counter-attack. Maybe he was tiring. But don't forget, he was 2-2 at the time when he went off, and they ended up losing. And really, Malmö just broke them down in that last 15 minutes, and Knudsen scored, like I say, a wonderful volley to win it from a set piece. But Amu really, really caught my eye. Ouattara Mohammed is in my 10 to watch. I didn't think he was great from the right back position. There was one skill as well from Malmö players, Sebastian Nanasi, who skinned him, to be honest. Mohammed, it was a really nice run, got through him and drew a foul. And there was a nice moment there, a little sort of look at each other, kind of, like, I've done you there. Ludvigsson, I think, is going to be a big player for Hammarby. He's one of the top assist providers in the league last season. The one player who maybe wasn't that bright was Selmani. He had a bit of a quiet game, I thought. But Kalili as well was really, really good. I think he could potentially have quite a good season. I was a little bit surprised Darijan Bojanic didn't play. But so, they've got some options from the bench. But for me, it was all about Akin Kunmiamu, that Nigerian youngster. He's an exciting player, to be honest. Only 18 years old.
He really caught my eye as well. Something about him, he's got something. Sometimes, you can just tell with a player, can't you? But for all the chances and the moments and the excitement, it looked like the second half was going to be goalless, and that Hammarby were going to come away with would have been a very good point for them. But right at the death, goal, maybe a goal of the season contender in the first game of the season. Jonathan, talk me through the winning goal for Malmö.
Yeah, it was a beautiful strike. Knudsen, the former Ipswich Town man, I was a little bit gutted because I strongly considered him for my fantasy team. Oof. And I was just about priced out of it. And I thought, well, I'll leave him out because, I don't know why I left him out, to be honest. I was kicking myself when he banged in that goal. But yeah, he's a good player, actually. Like I say, he used to be at Ipswich Town. The left back, he played a fundamental part in their title win last season. I don't think he maybe gets enough credit. He's just a very solid player. He's come back and he's really offered a lot to Malmö. And his goal was a beauty. What I really liked about the goal was the way he actually won the position in the first place. It was quite a brave interjection to win the ball in the first place. Put his body on the line, won the ball, and then just to have the balance and the ability to shift his feet and just fire that left foot volley, dipping volley into the corner. And like I say, the 8 fans, or if it was 8 or whatever, went crazy. So it was really, it was just a great end to a great game. I thought, like they ran off and, for a brief moment, you forgot about kind of no fans atmosphere, didn't you? It was like you could actually hear people celebrating. Malmö are the champions, and they put up a champion performance there to sort of just show to people, we're going to be around this season. Don't rule us out, because there was times during the match where Hammarby had them on the ropes a little bit. with their Mu and people like that and their interchanges of play. But Malmö just proved, we're the big boys. We can handle that. We're resilient. They're a resilient side, and for the first time, they are my team tipped to win the title. And I felt pretty comfortable with that. I think they are going to be a tough team to beat. And it was a brilliant goal from Knudsen.
Yeah, that was a great match to kick things off with. 3-2 victory for Malmö against Hammarby there. The match after that wasn't particularly memorable at all, though. Örebro 0, IFK Gothenburg 0. I don't think there's an awful lot really to say about that match, really, is that Jonathan did what it said on the tin. As we move on to Sunday's fixtures, and I was actually, at this point in time, I was having a nice little walk in the hills in my area here in Yorkshire, Jonathan. And I've got Yeremiev as my captain in the fantasy team. I was just waiting for the goal updates to come through on my phone. I was thinking, grabbing myself a couple of goals on the first game of the season. I was shocked at the end to see the result. Halmstad 1, Häcken 0. What on earth was going on here? I know you were not very impressed with Häcken at all, were you? So what exactly was the problem?
Yeah, and the only people that were happier than maybe Halmstad fans after this game were IFK Göteborg fans. There was a lot of them on Twitter sort of celebrating, to be honest, especially because of the source of the goal. Mikael Boman, former IFK Göteborg man himself. Obviously, they're two rivals, the Gothenburg rivals. I think it's rankled a few IFK fans that Häcken have kind of been talked up this season for the title. There's been a lot of talk about Häcken. We, dedicated quite a nice chunk of the preseason podcast to talking about their chances. Predicted them in second place. To be honest, the hype in terms of them winning the title, I had them in second for a reason, and they showed all the reasons that I didn't tip them for the title in this game. To be honest, just the defense is not quite strong enough. I think that is going to hamper them. I don't think, I questioned it, and already, there's warning signs there. I just don't think their centre backs are maybe tough enough to withstand like a season-long title race. Maybe they'll prove me wrong, but it was. Halmstad is quite a tough place to go, but I fully expected Häcken to win. I had 3 players, Häcken players in my fantasy team, so I had a bit of egg on my face on that sense. They also had a few injuries. Leo Bengtsson went off with an injury, which was a bit of a shame. Tobias Heinz went off. I'm not sure if he was injured, but he went off anyway. So it wasn't a good game for Häcken. They really did flatter to deceive. I was very disappointed with Yeremiev. You had him I know you said you had him in your fantasy team. He was poor, I thought. Really low intensity. They allowed. What I didn't like about Häcken was they're normally quite a high intensity side, but they allowed Halmstad defenders a lot of time on the ball. Andreas Johansson for me was probably man of the match, but he's 39 years old, the centre back. There was no intensive pressing. Put him under pressure. It's his first game back in Allsvenskan. Put the guy under pressure and see if he folds. I thought Yeremiev was very slack. Maybe coming back from Bundesliga too, he thinks it's going to be a bit easy. But I didn't like the way he played in that game. I have to be honest. They allowed the back four plenty of time on the ball basically for Halmstad. Baffo as well was really good. Johansson was making. Yeremiev had 1 or 2 chances, and Johansson made some really fantastic blocks. Going forward, they weren't amazing, but Sadat went off injured, and Bowman came on, like I say, and he scored a really nice winning goal in the second half. It just didn't gel for Häcken in this opening game. They've looked good in the Swedish Cup in pre-season, but the front four, Benny Traore, Heinz, Bengtsson, and Yeremiev just didn't have much sort of fluidity between them. No real interchanges of play, no real communication, and they were under pressure quite a lot. The fullbacks Fredriksson and Ekpolo were under a little bit of pressure at times, and Toivo and, like I say, Lindgren looked a little bit shaky against Antonsson and obviously Bowman when he came on. So very impressive from Halmstad. They've got their first win, but yeah, even Häcken's manager after the game said that we weren't good enough. It was poor, and couldn't really disagree with him, to be honest. Fully deserved win for Halmstad and a big upset to start the season.
Do you worry for Häcken here, or do you look at this and think maybe a one-off bad day at the office? Give Halmstad some credit. Looks like they were 4-4-2, probably pretty hard to break down. Really motivated on the return of the Allsvenskan. Is this just a little hiccup for Häcken? Do you expect them to bounce back quickly, or is there more concerns here?
I quite like your poetic hiccup for Häcken. That's quite a nice little linguistic sort of a turn you got there. But yeah, no, listen, they got Malmö next, so that is a big game this weekend. BK Häcken against Malmö is already, if you had it in pre-season, it's like a title decider type game. It's a 6-pointer at the top. They're going to be under pressure in that match. I would be strongly thinking they're going to have to do something to beat Malmö. Dalle Erendus is still injured. Now Bengtsson looks like he's going to be away for a time. There was rumours of a quite a bad rib injury, so I don't know how serious that is. It's to be determined. So yeah, they've got a bit of work to do to bounce back. I have to be honest. Mm-hmm. They're still a good team. Don't get me wrong. It's very early days. You always get a sort of newly promoted side who can pull off a bit of a bloody nose to a team like Häcken. Häcken are a bit. I said it in the preseason show, didn't I, Steve? I said I want some pressure on them this season. I want high expectations. My other, I think one worry about them is that I think Yeremiev has to be a leader for this team, and I just thought that he really disappointed me, to be honest. Maybe it's just rustiness. It's very early in the season, so I don't want to get on his back. But they need leaders really in that team, and I'm just wondering where the leadership might come, because they were a bit of a quiet side. They're a bit trying to think of an equivalent in England, maybe like an Everton sort of thing, where not even Everton, but sometimes you watch teams and you just think there's no one's really talking here. They're just drifting into a defeat. That's sort of how I felt about it. And there's no sort of Roy Keane or someone shouting at people.
No backbone, maybe when the going gets tough.
Yeah, they're going to need someone who's going to be shouting and getting in people's faces. And I thought Yeremiev would be that guy. But like I say, it's early days. It's a fantastic win for Magnus Hagglund. I thought, like I say, Johansson, the 39-year-old, was incredible. To be honest, he had a really good game. He said that I think we are a very stable team, which is a good word to describe it. They look quite stable. Yeremiev, after the game himself, came out and said, listen, for us to talk about winning the gold and things like that, they're just dreams. But if you want to have dreams, you have to win away in Halmstad. So he said, I think we need to go and start creating goal chances. So he was quite strong words after the match. But during the game, the low intensity of his pressing was quite disappointing, I thought. And yeah, as I say, Andreas Alm summed it up really. He said, today, Halmstad were better than us. We didn't have any goal chances. Halmstad didn't have many either, but then they scored a nice goal. And they were clearly the better team. Yeah,
forget dream, more like nightmare, wasn't it, by the sounds of it, for Häcken there. Now, so that was the first Sunday game. Other results on Sunday: Mjällby 0, Varberg 0, Norrköping 1, Sirius 1, Elfsborg 0. Djurgården 2. What are those three results there? Anything really stand out for you? Djurgården's win, quite impressive.
Yeah, there was one or two standout games. I didn't catch them all, but I just want to give a shout out to Mikael Bowman, like I said, the former EFCO man, because it's nice to see a player coming back, a bit of a veteran, and to in his 30s now, he's pushing towards the end of his career. But yeah, that definitely pleased EFCO fans, like I say. In terms of the games on Sunday, there was Norrköping Sirius. They played at a 1-0 draw. By the way, it was a fantastic goal from Skulason on his debut. I don't know if you've seen that goal, Steve, but absolute rocket, probably goal of the season. I mean, we've had some really good goals in this first round. It was about 30 yards out. Just pinged it top corner from 30 yards. Unbelievable strike, to be honest. And yeah, I caught Djurgården, Elfsborg, some of it. Sort of had one eye on it, to be honest. I really hope that someone buys the rights to this league, because I want to watch it on my TV screen, but I'm having to watch it on sort of mini streams and stuff at the moment. So if you're listening to this, Eurosport or whoever, Sky, DAZN, or whoever you are, Amazon, snap up the rights, please, because this is going to be an exciting league this season. I'm quite sure of that. Djurgården took the lead with a fantastic strike from Aslak von Witry, who probably is the best right back in this league. It was a lovely volley across from the left, and he just volleyed it home, top corner. Really well taken goal, good technique. And then it was that man, Edouard Chilufya is off and running. He was my fantasy captain, so I was loving it. He was put through on goal, and he made no mistake, went through, and it was an emphatic finish. Elfsborg, not looking too great. They tried to put up a fight, but it wasn't the Elfsborg of last season, really. Djurgården looked very strong. I think they're going to have a good season, to be honest. They're quite a well-rounded team. I think they've got a lot about them, and I think they're going to have a good season, to be honest. They've started well. Vasi Util in goal did quite well. The back four was just solid as ever. They had Luna Larsson, Ekdal, Elliot Sheck as well, and obviously Witry. They call them the Trent and Robertson of this league, and they kind of look like they're going to carry on where they sort of left off. And yeah, then you had obviously Mjällby, Varberg 0-0. Bit of a drab game, to be honest. Not too many chances at either end. I thought Varberg might nick it, but they didn't really have the firepower. So yeah, it was a decent game, 4 games on Sunday.
Yeah, so left a couple of games on Monday. Kalmar 0, Östersund 0, AIK 2, Degerfors 0. That was the game I focused on, whilst your attention was on Kalmar. I had a little bit of an eye on Kalmar as well. Both games were not too bad. Jonathan, really here?
Yeah, I'm going to probably maybe ask you a few questions about the AIK game because I didn't see it. But Kalmar, Östersund, isn't it? There's two of the teams that were predicted to do not too well this season. There's a lot of people who think they could both go down potentially. If you go back to the season preview, you'll see where I predicted them. But it was a game of very few chances. Let's put it that way. Kalmar, I mentioned about Henrik Rydström and this sort of new look Kalmar that we're potentially going to see. They played in a sort of a 3-4-3. Had quite a few players in unfamiliar positions. They're going to have to sort of figure that one out. I mean, I know they've got some injuries, but they had Haggy Hansen in goal. Sebastian Ring kind of playing as a left wing back. Douglas Bergqvist, Lars Setcher on his debut, his passing was quite wayward, I thought, in the game. But generally speaking, he had an okay match. They had a young 17-year-old called Elias Olsen, who I think I'm going to have my eye on this season. Left-sided centre-back. Reportedly had trials of Feyenoord when he was a 14-year-old. He didn't make my 10 to watch, but I liked what I saw in this game. He looked very solid at the back there for such a young age. And then obviously as a right wing, kind of a right wing backish, they had Piotr Johansson. Jonathan Ring went off before half time, which was a bit of a shame on his debut. Obviously, I mentioned he could be a big player for them. Sakpakidis on the left, he did okay, not great. Romario was quite good in midfield. Carl Gustafsson, I thought, had a good game. And then up front, I thought they were quite weak up front. They had Isaac Magnusson. Didn't think he had a great game, if I'm honest. Niels Froling is missing through injury. He's their main man up front. So yeah, it was really there that they fell down. They didn't have that fluidity up front. They didn't have that firepower. Didn't create many chances. Had a lot of possession, those teams. So I think, I mentioned in the preseason that they're going to have a completely new game style, and I think they could map what Sirius did last season potentially, and surprise a few people. I saw early signs of that in this game. There was some nice interchanges of play, some nice 1-2 passing, things like that, triangles, and a lot of possession, which is surprising because Kalmar are usually a 40% possession sort of team in last season. So, their man Ove Poitasen, I put up a video on Twitter earlier of him. He's back. Their number one fan. He did a sort of motivational video pre-game. I love it. I'm not sure how he'll be feeling off this 0-0. In terms of Östersund, they really are they're going to be in for it this season. It's going to be a long year for them, I think. We mentioned the transfer ban and everything like that. They went for a 5-3-2, so it was quite a defensive formation. Ali Kaiter in goal, Sonko Sundberg, Eric Haugen played well, I thought. Mukibi played well. Patrick Capozzo, I think I like the look of. I think he had a decent game there as a sort of a left wing back, or sort of the left-sided man of the five. Mensiro got an early injury. Siwan Kambo, I think he's a pit bull in midfield. He's going to have a big season, a big role to play, I think, if they're going to stay up. Felix Horberg, Fritzen in centre midfield as well. And then, of course, up front they had Blair Turg and Juno Baptiste. Jarell Sellers, I think, is injured. Juno Baptiste, the less I say about him, the better. I don't think he did anything. I think he completed 5 passes in 63 minutes, which pretty much summed it up. He did nothing. Blair Turgott is the man in that sense. They didn't have a single shot on target, Östersund. So really, that tells you everything you need to know. They had 1 corner to Kalmar's 10. So yeah, it's they ground out the point, so they'll be happy. But it's going to be a long slog, I think, for them. It wasn't a game of real entertainment, but I thought it was quite intriguing to see the two teams and how they would, where they went with their sort of potential, because these points could count towards the end of the season. That's kind of almost a potential 6-pointer in terms of relegation already. I know it's very early days, but both sides needed a win really when you think about it. And I think playing on the grass surface, Östersund, I think, trained for the 2 days before the match on a grass pitch at Oskarshamns, so that maybe helped them adapt a little bit. But it was I wouldn't say uneventful. It was actually quite an interesting game to watch, I thought, tactically and that kind of thing. But a 0-0 in the end.
Yeah, I had a little bit of an eye on that game as well, and I thought Östersund's defended quite well. They used a lot of gamesmanship towards the last 10-20 minutes. They were time wasting a bit to, tactically making sure they saw out the 0-0. The goalkeeper, like you mentioned in the pre-season podcast, he always impresses me. He's got a great authority at the back there, a pair of safe hands, you feel like, you know what I mean? And he came up with 2 or 3 important saves at one point, didn't he? So yeah, I was quite impressed how they dug out and got a point, because a lot of teams would have gone there and probably lost there. Kalmar, certainly it's a different Kalmar now, isn't it? But yeah, a good point for Ostersons, I would say.
Yeah, I think I'll be happy with a point, but I think really when I look at it, I just think to myself, where are they going to get goals from this season? That is a big question mark for me this season. I think my sort of reason for picking Blair Turgott as one of the 10 to watch, I think I feel more vindicated now really doing that, because it really is Blair. It is really it's Blair or bust really. I don't know. It's the Blair goal project, you know what I mean, instead of the Blair Witch project, because if he doesn't get the goals, then they're toast. I mean, unless Jarrell Sellers comes back, you know, Nebiu Perry came on and played sort of up front, but to me he's more of a wide man. I just can't see where goals are in this team, and with the transfer ban, you know, that is my one question mark. They're going to have to do a lot of grinding in this season to stay up, because you know, but defensively they looked okay. So, you know, they weren't leaking, and like you say, Kaito at the back is he was probably top 2 goalkeepers in the league last season. So you know, they've got a foundation to work from at the back. But yeah, where will they get the goals? But no, it was a good game, I thought, to watch, and I wasn't too disappointed at missing out on the AIK match, which you saw.
Yeah, I was. You know what? I've slagged off AIK a bit, haven't I, in the last 2 or 3 years on this podcast, mostly when they were with Norling, not in terms of the results and everything, but in terms of watchability. So I thought, you know what, new sort of AIK, I'll watch this game. And I wasn't disappointed. This was a very, very watchable game of football, Jonathan. It ended 2-0 to AIK. And I was impressed by them. I thought they looked pretty good. And this is an interesting game. I want to talk tactics, actually, because the formation that Degerfors came here with was a 3-4-3. Now, officially a 3-4-3 anyway, which it felt to me when I saw that, I'm like, this is quite aggressive to go here in Stockholm against AIK, first game of the season. But effectively what it is, it's a weird I don't like 3-4-3 myself, Jonathan. I've got to be brutally honest with you. I think you've got to have the right sort of players for this system. Basically, when they're in possession, it becomes a 5-2-3, really. And then if you're out of possession, it's like 5-4-1. But you can get caught out in a lot of different ways. I think you're really asking an awful lot of the 2 central midfielders. And unfortunately, they just didn't have quality in the midfield compared to AIK. Did Degerfors here, but they come here, they've had a go. They're not the sort of team they're going to sit back like Ostersons did and just play for a 0-0. They came here and they were in a positive frame of mind. So let's give them some credit for that. But I think it was a bit naive of them to think that they could match up to the quality of AIK in this game. And AIK were on it, really. They've got some good players, Stefanelli, Hussein, Larson. I thought they completely dominated the midfield. That them 3 there. Stefanelli's like a shadow striker, actually, isn't he, really? He's been darting runs centrally forward. And then out wide, the Finn guy, the Finnish guy, Ila Tupa, was man of the match, really. A goal and an assist. Bahawi bagged a goal out wide. AIK turned up, both in terms of performance and tactically. It was a very, very accomplished performance.
Yeah, and what was the team shape for AIK? Because I've got it listed as a 4-4-2, just looking at their formations, but I don't know, was that necessarily the case? How is Bertus Grislak's team looking? And from Degerfors' point of view, obviously you're the first one of us to see Degerfors this season on the podcast, so I haven't seen them play. How did their sort of manager, you mentioned the 3-4-3 there, I've got it listed as the man of the match was their goalkeeper, Ismail Diawara. I mean, how under the cosh were they?
I think, I tell you what, it was clearly an instruction for AEK to shoot on sight, just pepper the goal. Now, maybe they thought the goalkeeper was a weakness or something. A lot of them shots were from long range. You look at the statistics, 17 shots to 8, and a lot of the saves were fairly comfortable. I can't remember a save where I'm like, wow, that was another worldie or anything like that. He did what was expected of him. But maybe this is a thing that they might target against certain teams. If it's a good shooting opportunity, let's give it a hit, see what happens. And you know what? Stefanelli hit the crossbar with an unbelievable hit. I can't believe Stefanelli didn't score in this game, actually, because he looked so dangerous. But if that's watch out for them scoring from range this year, if this is a tactic. In terms of their own formation, it was, 4-3-3, certainly back 4 anyway. The midfield is sort of Larson is sort of he stays a bit deeper. Hussein's almost like a box-to-box midfielder. Great passing, I thought, from Hussein. And then Stefanelli's sort of like this shadow striker guy. You've got a couple of wingers who can sort of play as traditionally wide or come inside. And then Radulovic, who, I'll be honest, I didn't even notice him. I just hardly noticed the guy in this game. I don't know what you call him, maybe a false nine or something, or a deep line forward. But Stefanelli always seems to be the one that's getting on the ball and driving forward. Maybe Radulic is almost used as a bit of a decoy, to be honest. But there are some good. The Otieno at left back really impressed me. His assist for the first goal was superb. Lovely whipping crossing, which Ilya Tupa finished off. But they looked in great physical shape as well. You know, AK really well conditioned for the season. You could just tell they had a little bit of an edge about them. You know, I was dead impressed in that way. Degerfors, they weren't bad. There were positives for Degerfors. If they play like this against some of the teams down there, I think there's goals in this team for sure. But I think it was naive tactically. Like, it effectively becomes 5-2-3, and you've got like two wing backs and then two wingers. For me, that doesn't work. You know what? You're leaving yourself short in certain areas. You don't really get a matchup positivity in any sort of way when you got two midfielders effectively against the quality AIK have got, three in midfield plus. You know, Stefanelli's brilliant in that area. They would have been better off having like two D mids or something. Didn't make sense. There were mismatches all over the park for AEK, and they took advantage of it really. But I like what I saw from Degerfors. I think, give them some credit, they had a go.
Yeah, certainly. Gravius and Carlin probably struggled in the centre midfield, like you say, and I did tip them to go down, and part of the reason is because I just think up front they're a bit weak. You know, I think Bertilsson and Sargon Abraham, I saw both got taken off. They need to score goals, don't they, for them to have any chance?
They were too far apart as well. I felt the players on the field, they were too wide. You know, you can't connect passing when players are that far apart. Bertilsson, I mean, on the right hand side there, the guy Lindell, he made some decent runs forward, and he was trying to put crosses in. But then just not enough to aim at, you know. But AEK got players back. They defended well. Positioning was really good. If you're an underdog like Degerfors and you're going to try and get an upset at a place like this, you need a bit of luck. You need to hope that your opposition have an off day, and AEK made sure that did not happen. They've clearly got the extra quality in class. They played well, and then when tactically you're kind of getting it superior as well. It was I think it's sort of an awakening for Degerfors. You know, welcome to the big league again, and it'd be interesting to see if they change their approach away from home against sort of superior opposition going forward, or whether they kind of keep this fairly wide open system because they were having a go themselves. But it's not. I mean, in terms of the season, losing 2-0 there is not a disaster for them, is it?
Yeah. The next game is Kalmar at home, so you know I think ARK is a tough one. It sounds like ARK are looking quite good. Then you know. And their next game is EFK Göteborg on Monday. So that's going to be a massive game away from home. So, yeah, interesting one. But before you wrap up, we've got a listener question, which I'll finish off with while we're on the subject of AIK. And that's from Matteo Albanese. Now, looking at his profile, he's a journalist, and I think he's from Genoa. He's got a Genoa profile pic. So maybe potentially this could tie into why he's asking this question. I don't know. But he says, Saku Latupa appreciation would be great. So give us your thoughts, because there was a lot of talk on Twitter after this match about Latupa.
Do you know what? I was looking and I was like, who's this guy? Because I can't actually remember you ever really talking about him before. I looked at his history. He was on loan last year in Finland at IFK Mariehamn. He's been around the block a bit. He's been at Ajax and places. So obviously, he's just only 21 years of age. What I liked about him, he finished his goal well. His positioning was excellent. He looks like a two-footed player. I think he can play probably on either wing, I would guess. But he looks like he's got some great skills on the ball. To be honest, this is someone who caught my eye. Sometimes you can get a player go away on loan, can't you? And they come back really good. And this might be an example of it. It was a good first game for him. He's got the technical skills to cause problems to a lot of teams in this league, I think, John.
Yeah, and he's a formerly at Ajax, so you know he's got a bit of a history about him. He wasn't really on my radar this season to watch, but yeah, certainly it looks like he's done quite well. He was at Ajax's under-19s. So Saku Latupa, 21-year-old, keep an eye on him. He could be one to watch this season and maybe have in your fantasy team. That is pretty much it in terms of the wrap for this week one. Now we're going to move on to fantasy, and then we've got some listener questions. Fantasy we had a massive feedback, haven't we, Steve? We had a really strong uptake to the league. What's your take on it so far? It's been a quite an exciting week one, hasn't it? We've had a lot of people joining the league.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've got well over 100 in the league. We'll pump that code out again. Hopefully, a few more can join before next week. I'm amazed by the how much interest is in Allsvenskan fantasy this season, because the last couple of years it feels like it's in Scandinavia, the Norwegian one has taken more of a front seat, and probably because of the scoring system, to be honest. It's still different in Sweden compared to the rest of it. But yeah, loads of great interest, loads of talk, a lot of thanks for all your feedback and everything. We'll try and do a bit of advice here in Allsvenskan fantasy. As far as my team, well, I'm not bottom of the table. I think I'm in 91st place in our league. Unfortunately, I made the wrong captaincy choice with Yeremiev. I thought he'd fill his boots. My bench has got like 20 points on it nearly. So I made some bad decisions myself there. But it looks pretty tight. The scoring in our league is the top score was 68 points. A couple of guys up there, David Aurora and Adrian Markstedt. There with 68 points, looks pretty close. I'm not sure who leads overall in the whole competition, but I think quite a lot of the big guns didn't really fire, did they, this week? So that might explain why it's a little bit low scoring.
Yeah, and just in case anyone's listening who wants to join, the code is HQ8GU7. So fantasy.allsvenskan.se. If you haven't joined the league already yet, join the Nordic Football Podcast League. And yeah, let's see how we get on. I had a decent week. Like I say, Chulafi was my captain. So yeah, I'm pretty sort of mid-table, I think, at the moment, which I'm pretty happy about, considering I had 3 Häcken players who did nothing. So yeah, but no, it's going to be a really interesting league. I think this season going to be a lot of competition. And one thing I've noticed, the podcast, this preseason podcast was one of our best ever episodes, wasn't it, for downloads? And seems like there's a lot of interest. A lot of people sent us their fantasy teams and that kind of thing. So yeah, really happy to have you guys in the league, and let us know how you got on in week one. Tweet us at Nordic Football Podcast at Nordic Footpod, and let us know how you're getting on with the week 2 coming up. If you're going to be making any changes to your team.
There's 114 points leads the way, by the way, at the moment. It's someone who used there's a I forget there's a chip here. You get double points for your defenders. So someone's wrapped up here with 5 guys at the back and nailed it, really. But I always like to save that chip, and if there's like midweek rounds and stuff, where matches get postponed. So yeah, 114 points does lead the way in fantasy. But yeah, I've been really great interest in fantasy this year in Sweden. So long may it continue. And I think we're going to finish off the episode with some listener questions. So I'm going to go through a few here. Starting off here, this is one I'm actually not going to answer on this episode, but from FPL Oakwell, thanks for your question. Can you do a mini roundup of any pre-season games that the Norwegian sides have played? Probably next week, in the next few weeks, focus more towards Norway and the pre-season there. So keep your eye out there, FPL. We will be, don't you worry, Norway will be getting plenty of attention going forward. I've got a question for you though here, Jonathan. It's from Andy Martin at FPL_tactician. Thank you very much indeed for this question, Andy. Which team and player surprised you the most in the first round of the Allsvenskan matches, good and bad?
Yeah, and I have to give a shout out to Andy. He I think he mentioned that he had gone for a 2-hour walk with his dog while he was listening to the podcast pre-season. So yeah, really appreciate that, and I think he shared it as well, which was very kind. So I hope you enjoyed that nice walk with your dog when you listened to the show, and I hope it gave you some value. Team that surprised me the most was, I'm gonna say, Halmstad. I think they showed a solidity there that I wasn't expecting against a good side in Häcken. I think they're going to have bigger tests to come, maybe potentially, because I think Häcken were a little bit rusty. But I liked what I saw. I mentioned the centre backs in the preseason show; they'll be crucial, and they were both really good. I thought they were very, 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 very good. Actually, probably players of the week. Which player surprised me the most? That's a good question. That. I'm gonna say. Do you know what? I'm gonna actually say Patrick Kaposa of Östersunds. I've seen him a couple of times in pre-season. He's a left back, like I say. He's been in and out. He's had a bit of a. I think I remember even when I was in Sweden, he was still somewhere in Sweden, and he kind of it's just always been on the fringes, never really been in the team. he's finally getting his chance now in the team, really. And I think he could have quite a big season this year. I think he's been loaned out to Lulea, places like that. He's been on several loans. He's still only 23. I quite liked what I saw of him. Eric Haugen, I thought, had a good game as well, but that wasn't a surprise. I expect him to have quite a good season. So yeah, I'm going to give a shout out to a bit of a left field one there, Patrick Capozzo of Ostersunds. And then in terms of bad, Jeremiev was poor. I was surprised how bad he was, to be honest. I wasn't expecting that. I really, one of the things I liked about him in pre-season in some of the Swedish Cup games was I thought his pressing, he looked on it, he was sharp, he looked like he kind of come back and had a bit of arrogance about him. That arrogance had gone. He was a bit of a house cat against Halmstad. And I thought he was poor. It surprised me in a bad way there. Team that surprised me in a bad way, it's got to be Häcken, isn't it, in general? I just thought they were disappointing. Haven't seen every game, so probably being a bit harsh in some ways, but I was shocked by how really in terms of Häcken, I was shocked by how the lack of creativity. That's what shocked me the most. They didn't have much they didn't create much, and that's unusual for Häcken, who are generally quite a creative side. Usually very fluid, especially on the break. I thought they would just have a lot of counterattacks in that game. I thought they would hit them on the break a lot, and that was where I thought they were going to I thought they'd beat them sort of 3-0. To be honest, I thought they'd have a really nice counterattacking style and just go at that pitch and score a few goals, but it didn't happen. So yeah, Häcken.
Before we move on, Jeremiev, you say he was the unpleasant surprise of the week. Look, 36.7% of people own him in fantasy, including myself. I captain him. Now they've got Malmö next. I've not actually looked at their fixtures after that. I mean, should owners of Jeremiev be worrying? I know it's very early doors. Is it time to shift him on now? Is he going to be a bust early on, or do you have the faith that he can rebound straight away?
Good question. Häcken had 60% possession, 2 shots on target. So that really sums it up. They didn't really create anything shots wise. Jeremiev did have 1 or 2 shots that were blocked. So it was also partly because the defense was so good of Halmstad. I'd keep him. I think they're playing Malmö, and he is a former Malmö player, so that's always a bit of this weekend. He's got something to prove against his former club. So I'd maybe give him another chance. Don't get me wrong. I expect him to be one of the top 5 to 10 scorers in the league this season. So I'm expecting big things from Jeremiev. Still a good age, still a good quality, a good striker at this level. So I think that's what surprised me, really. I just thought he was a bit. I just thought he was lackluster. It wasn't necessarily that he didn't get on the end of chances and stuff like that. It was more just I just thought he was quite lackluster out of possession. It wasn't the ball work. It was more the kind of when Halmstad had the ball. You need someone up front like that to be leading the line in terms of pressing. And I just didn't see that from him. I thought he was a bit kind of slow. But I would keep him. I think he's got maybe 1 or 2 things to prove. But I guess that's the beauty of FPL. Do you stick or do you twist? Because there's a few strikers there who are already scoring goals. So, stick or twist.
There was also a question from Otto Reclose. Of any teams or performances in the first round change your season predictions? I think pretty much that ties in with Andy's question there. But thanks very much for it, Otto Reclose. There's a question that I'm actually going to answer. It's from Heskybo, Beginners Elite Serie podcast. Shout out to that podcast, by the way, for Elite Serie Fantasy. Well worth a listen. Heskybo, which 3 new players in each of the Elite Serie and Allsvenskan excited the most for this season? Well, we're quite a bit away. We're still a good month away from Norway, so we've plenty of time for that going forward. But I'm going to give 3 sort of names here, a little bit left field in a couple of instances. I'm going to say Axel Lindahl at Buda Glimt. He's signed from Degerfors. Now, this is a guy who can play pretty much anywhere, and I just feel like maybe he's 26 years old. But I just feel moving into the Buda Glimt environment, maybe we can expect something a little bit of a surprise in a pleasant way. So I'm going to say Axel Lindahl. I'm also going to say Marcus Solbakken at Starbæk, a youngster who is coming from Hamcam, who is sort of a midfielder who can play in a number of different roles there. I've heard some good things about him. So a youngster there from Hamcam, moved to Starbæk, Marcus Solbakken, who excites me. And I'm going to have to, I think, go for a Tromsø player, Moses Eby, who did very well last year. Scored a few goals, got a few assists. Ex-Lillestrøm, who didn't really achieve his potential there. But now he's a 23-year-old. He's probably a bit more mature. I think someone in attack is going to have to be consistently standing up for Tromsø this year, because they've got a number of guys like Espejord, Ingebrigtsen, who go lame, sadly, get injured all the time. Then I think Edby could be the guy who comes in, from HamKam, actually. Poor HamKam, they've been raided, haven't they, this year? But I think he could be the guy comes in and does and pleasantly surprises people in the north of Norway. So 3 names there that I'm guessing there's not too much talk about, but you could maybe consider there, Peskibbo.
Great stuff. And then we've got a couple more questions, haven't we? Thanks for your question, guys. It's great to see that interaction. Samuel Walsh, who was an AOK fan, I believe, unless he's got that AOK logo there for no reason, which I'm sure it isn't. So yeah, thanks for your question, Samuel. He says, AOK look great tonight. Excited for the game next Monday. Of course, they have a big game, like I say, against EF Core. Then he says, on the other hand, Kalmar absolutely dominant, but creation of chances was abysmal. Worrying signs for them, ? I watched that game. I wouldn't be too worried, because I think Niels Froling is their main man up front. He will come back. I did question where Edvin Kroner was, because I like Kroner. He's shown some glimpses, but it seems he's out of favour at the moment, so I don't know exactly where he is. It seems like he's not injured, so that's a bit of a strange one. But yeah, Niels Froling's their main man up front. He, like I say, he wasn't playing, so I wouldn't be too worried there. I didn't think that, Isak Magnusson was too good up front. So if Niels Froling's injury is long term, then that could be a bit of a worry, because they brought on a 17-year-old Isaac, I think Vigeskog. I think he came on, or maybe he didn't. I'm not sure. But yeah, they had basically they had very light options from the bench, to sum it up. And yeah, they brought on Oliver Berg as well for his debut. He came on at halftime, just before halftime, because Ring got injured. He came on. He's from GIF Sundsvall. They also brought on one of my 10 to watch, Noah Shamoon. Of course, he came on, the 18-year-old. He looked okay. Didn't really do much. 1 or 2 glimpses, but yeah, didn't really, wasn't that effective. I think they could struggle to score goals if Niels Froling doesn't come back. I do think they are a little bit light up front, and I didn't really like what I saw with Magnusson. I thought he worked hard. Seems like he has some potential. He's 22, but I just didn't think he was a real presence, especially with 3 at the back for Östersund. They just kind of crowded him out, to be honest. They were too physical for him. So I wouldn't be too worried at this stage. I think, I would be surprised if they don't grab a goal in the next game against Degerfors away this Sunday. So that should be an interesting game, to be honest.
Yeah, and I just want to give a shout out again to Warson, who made some very good points on the YouTube video in the season preview about Kalmar. Big Kalmar fan out there. Thanks for your comments there, Warson. Always greatly appreciated, and your support as well for the podcast overall. So yeah, that's pretty much it for the round 1 discussion.
We've got one more question, but I think we're not going to cover it this week. So I just want to give a shout out to Lord Moldavort. He's asked us, what do we think of this year's UEFA Conference League, and which Scandinavian team do you rate to go furthest? We'll cover that in another podcast coming, I think, maybe as we get more into European football. But for this week, we'll leave that, because that's quite a big question, isn't it, really, Steve? And I think we're going to cover that in a podcast special coming soon. So stay tuned, Lord Moldavort, and thanks for your question. And
that's it for this episode. Thanks very much for listening. Really enjoyed that one. Some great stuff from week 1 in Sweden, and I'm really looking forward to seeing some more of it before the Norwegian season starts. I really want to get stuck into Allsvenskan this season, Jonathan, and I enjoyed what I saw this year. I seem to avoided the crap games, and I saw the good ones. So yeah, I've got to keep doing that.
Yeah, you did well. You did well watching AOK. I think that looks like a good game. I might try and catch that back. For those who don't know, of course, we're both we do our analysis, and we keep detailed spreadsheets and documents of every team in both leagues. So, if you do want to sort of hit us up from a scouting point of view and that kind of thing, feel free to get in touch with us. Our email address is in our Twitter bio at Nordic Footpod. You can contact us via email, and always free to sort of discuss Swedish or Norwegian football. I certainly feel very knowledgeable at this moment in time, having done the season preview. So yeah, don't forget to listen to that back if you haven't already. We've got our 1 to 16 predictions for every team in the league, plus the 10 to watch for the season to come. Some of them did quite well in this week 1, so that was a nice start. And if you've seen on our Twitter at Nordic Football, we've got a World Cup Allsvenskan logos going on at the moment. So check that out, because that's a bit of a fun game we're doing to start the season. We've had some interesting polls so far, haven't we? I think Djurgården made it through. Sirius has made it through, and we've got a few other polls this week. We've got Häcken involved in one, EFK involved in one. So yeah, we're trying to find the best Allsvenskan logo. So don't forget to hit us up on Twitter and check out those polls and vote in them. We've got some interesting polls coming up in the next 2 weeks or so to try and find the best logo in the league. You can also catch me on Twitter at JFFootball, JFFUTBOL, and you can catch Steve on Twitter at MeatmanSoccer. Steve, I was a little bit disappointed to see Varberg boys go out because that logo's grown on me, to be honest. What's your take on the Allsvenskan World Cup of logos so far?
Well, it was a low-scoring match in terms of votes. I think we only had 90 votes for that one. Who knows if we'd got another 20 or 30 more, well, even 10 more, then maybe Sirius could have lost that match. But yeah, we had Djurgården beat Elfsborg fairly convincingly, and Malmö absolutely thrashed Östersund in the results we've had so far. And the current ones on the vote at the time of recording, it looks like IFK Gothenburg are going to hammer Kalmar, which surprises me. I think the Kalmar logo is quite a good one. There's I think Häcken are involved in a bit of a tussle with Degerfors right now. We're going to hopefully get all the first round matches done by the end of this week, and starting next week we'll be starting the quarterfinals of these logos. So it's a bit of fun, and there's some good logos out there. There's a couple of shocking ones as well, but it would be very interesting.
Yeah, I voted for Kalmar in that. So sorry to EFK Göteborg fans, but I like that Kalmar logo. I hope that someone is going to rep for that Kalmar logo. And Häcken Degerfors, I voted for Häcken. I think just about I prefer that one. But yeah, I was sad to see Varberg go. Östersund's, I quite like the Östersund's logo, but they got battered, didn't they? The Elfsborg Djurgården was up and down because I think an Elfsborg fan tagged it first, and then some Diff fans found it and they tagged it. So it was an up and down poll, that one. That was end to end stuff, a bit like the Malmö Hammarby game. But it's been a great episode. Don't forget to follow us there, and you can catch that all there and go back and vote. But we will see you for the next episode very soon. So from this episode, thanks for listening.
Take care and goodbye.